So I was just sitting here earlier with Helen Keller, and we were looking at some JPEGs, and it dawned on me, oh gosh, I need to go shoot another video and continue on demoing my Hammond HiFi purchases, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. So let's get this thing going, shall we? This section of the video, we're going to take a quick peek at this HeathKit model IM-4100, IM-4100. And this is a frequency counter. It's good from about 5 Hertz all the way up to 30 megahertz. And it dates from 1975. And you look at all the lovely nicotine and aging, that too also dates from about that time frame. So that's fantastic. This is a really cool little frequency counter. Not only does it have a kickstand, whoops, now it's broken. I broke it. No. I do have the other screw for this knob. This one here is stripped, and that one is stripped as well, but what they done on the inside was they took some epoxy and a nut and made it no longer stripped. On the back here we have provisions for a 12 volt plug, so you can mount this on your dash next to your CB radio and cruising down the road with your twin truckers. 10-4. We have a switch here to toggle between the external and internal oscillator, and then we have inputs here for our input-output oscillator. Have not tested that as far as external oscillation goes, or signal, and I'm going to do just that. I have played with this, have tested it, not for any form of accuracy, just to make sure functionality was there. Oh, and it was. We're going to plug that into Moose Juice. Hit the big red switch on that. This is just two straight AC mains. It is not any form of protection outside of what that strip may offer. Surge protection strip it is. We're going to go ahead and turn this on and get this warming up. Controls need to be lubricated. Guess I should have did that when I had it apart, but I forgot. I'm going to take a signal cable, stick it into our function generator, and get really loud and proud up close in the microphone. Blow an eardrum or two out. Wrench that down so it don't move on us. Let me go ahead and punch up a frequency. Let's go to 10 megahertz sine wave. Says that I'm over. Says that I'm over. So I guess I should flick that switch so I am reading properly. The power on the generator is at negative 10 dBm. Let me punch that up into numbers we all can understand. Let's just go to a straight 50 millivolts. Turn that down to 1. That's our attenuator. 110 and 100. Haven't played with it enough to tell you if after warm up this is going to settle down. But honestly, I'm generally good for the first 3 digits after the decimal point, and I'm fat and happy. In the work I do, since anything I do is not lab grade work, I'm okay. I'm okay. It's alright. Leaving it at the same 50 millivolts, let's punch in 5 hertz. I'm not expecting it to read, but stranger things have happened. I do have the service manual, owner's manual for this. It is free, available on the interwebs. I don't have it in front of me, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, so I'm not sure what it calls for. I think it was the specs was 1 kilohertz. What was it? 1 volt peak to peak at 1000 hertz or something like that. I don't remember. Anyway, I was just noticing that the display here in this corner is starting to flap a little bit in the breeze. So if that ever comes off, I'll glue that back down or duct tape it or something. Let's bump this up to 50 millivolts. Oh, I'm sorry, not 50. 50 hertz. Okay. Let's go back to 5 hertz. And we'll go to our juice. We'll go to 1000. 1 volt peak to peak. Gosh, I'll get this right yet. Go to 2 volts peak to peak. And then I'll go ahead and just run it up to 5 for the heck of it. So if it was going to read a frequency, it would definitely be right there. We go to 50 hertz, and we're still at the 5 volts peak to peak. And there we go. So at 5 volts peak to peak, definitely too much juice for the moose. Let's drop that down to 1 volt peak to peak. .500 millivolts. 100 millivolts. 50 millivolts. 10 millivolts. So definitely looks like it needs some love down there on the bottom end. or even, who knows, 10 might have been way too much. Here we are at 50 hertz, 1 volt peak to peak, and as you see, it's reading it just fine. And then off of this generator, let me go all the way to my top end as far as frequency is concerned, which is 21.5 megahertz. We are still at 1 volt peak to peak. And there we go. Again, I'm fat and happy. Let's shove 5 volts peak to peak into that thing. And there we go. Pretty awesome. And who knows what it would be after warm-up time. And this is, let me go 1 volt peak to peak, and then I'm going to drop this down to 10 megahertz. Perfect. Alright, so now the next thing I want to do is spin this around and find something to prop that up on. I know. How about a screwdriver? Let me zoom you in. Next thing I'm going to do we want to read what this is giving us. So I'll take this little adapter and then we'll run this up to another frequency counter. And this is a vintage leader 1 gig freak counter, which you could see that. I've not tried this before, so let's see what it does. Oh, cool. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is move this over to a O-scope, and we want to see what the pattern looks like. This O-scope that we're plugging into is also something that I bought from HiFi. I paid $15 for the scope. I paid $5 for the frequency counter. The scope is, from what I could tell, fully functioning. It's very dirty. I haven't cleaned it. I wanted to show you how filthy it was, and trying to read the knobs here has been hard. I just lightly wiping them off, doing a little bit of research on it. From what I find, the ink on here is fragile and need to use water and lightly wipe it away, or all the ink will wash off. Okay, so back on to what we were doing. We're going to take this cable and we're going to stick it into port A. The controls on that need to be clean. and that's why it's got that little wiggle right there. Haven't opened it up yet. I really like the scope. It's very impressive. Has a amazingly bright display. And if I remember right, the device comes from is either 1985, 87-ish, somewhere in there. Maybe as late as 89, somewhere right there. So regardless of where it came, the time frame, as you can see, that CRT is extremely bright. Very impressive. I like the scope. It's just weird. But I'll get used to it. It's fully functioning. That's more than I can say about the other 3 scopes that I own. So that is our signal that we're getting out of the back of the frequency counter. Not exactly a square wave, not exactly a sine wave, not exactly a sawtooth. I do believe it's supposed to be a square wave. So we might have some issues in the scope that we need to get in there and check some components. With that said, we'll conclude the frequency counter. Frequency counter works really good. Very impressed with it. And we will quickly test this scope. Segue into the scope. I'm going to plug this into my function generator. And this is a 10 megahertz signal we're looking at. Pretty amazing, if I say so. That is a 5 megavolt signal at 10 megahertz. I just said 10. And I just hit the 20 meg limit. Let me increase the power. We'll just go ahead and go to 1 volt peak to peak. And that looks really, really good. Even with this full light right on it. And go ahead and move this over to channel 2. Turn 2 on. Now this is a analog scope. It's not a DSO. I like DSO. I have 2 of them, but they're weird. So in a way, it's nice to have a pure analog scope. But I will get my other DSO up and running, or it'll become target practice. Was going to tear the case off and we were going to look at it and all that good stuff, but I think to try to keep my videos down somewhat, we'll bypass that for now. I guess if you really want to see what it looks like on the internet, on the inside, you will learn to use Google. Google is your friend. Now I've gone through the paces with the scope. Everything appears to work out just fine. The only issue noted was the little bounce, which I suspect is from a dirty control. And the more I use it, the more I'd like to think that that'll break free and clear up on its own. Otherwise, when I'm in there, I'll go ahead and clean them. There are some issues with the scope that you do want to take care of, especially in this vintage scope. You want to go ahead and swap out the across the mains capacitors. From what I understand, when they go, they do a number. I'll probably also, at that point in time, go through and do a full recap on it. It's all surface mounted, and I do believe it's all off-the-shelf components. And there's a modification that you could do to add a fan in here, and that I will probably do as well. The next piece of gear I got, this one here I paid $5 for, is a Kenwood TR-2500 HT. And when I got it home and I was able to look at the graphic here on the case, I thought, man, that looks familiar. You know, I just wonder. This one came with the book, and when I saw the book, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I already own this radio. And I do. This one I got at a ham swap. I believe it was earlier this year. This radio works. Battery pack. I just need to get a charger for the battery pack. I just don't have a plug, and I'm not sure what plug that takes. So if by chance you have an idea, let me know. Radio does transmit and receive. I just need battery charger. This one had the bag. I forgot to put it back in there when I reassembled it. Has the book, and it has a original dead Kenwood battery. By hooking this up to a battery charger, to my benchtop power supply, was able to power it on, and I could hear static noise, but I did not see a display. It'd be nice to get them up and working, or at least, I don't know, to play with, I reckon. They really have no value. This one here at the ham swap I paid $2 for. This one here I paid $5. They're also from, I believe, 1986. They're a VHF 2-meter rig. But you know, if you have simplex needs, then these are just fine. Or you live in a community where, you know, things are not in digital repeater, digital PL tones, digital communication, then these are just fine. You know, you go into a local ham swap, maybe you need something for talk-in frequency. Packet, if, I don't know, I know Packet's gone digital as well. So that is the fact, Jimmy Jack. One day we'll get that to fire up and see what happens. I know they made a drop-in charger for the radio, but for the original battery, the original battery has contacts on them where the aftermarket does not. So I mean, you know, if I had an inkling that the battery was still valid, I would get the drop-in charger if one available. But I'll hold out until I could find the wall-wart. The other thing I got was this Ray Jefferson model 5000M, M as in Mary. This is a VHF marine radio. Works in the frequency spectrum of 150 megahertz. The radio does power on. And give all the appearance that it does work. It has 88 channels plus 10 weather band, 9 weather channels. And I say it gives the appearance to work. As we see, it does receive. Now, I don't have an outside antenna, so I can't really confirm how well it receives, if it does receive. And I have not hooked it up to the IFR. Try to make it transmit, and I cannot get it to transmit. And I know certain channels you can and cannot transmit on the marine frequency. And looking at the chart of what does what, you know, I go to a authorized, ship-to-ship type frequency. You even go to channel 16, which is emergency, and it does not transmit. Now, before you get too excited, saying, well, you don't have a boat, you can't legally transmit there. Well, that's very true, I don't. And that's very true, you can't. However, as I said a moment ago, I don't have an antenna. I guess if one wanted to get prissy, we'll just take a dummy load, which is probably a good thing for the radio. Won't blow the finals. Guess we don't need the volume up to transmit. And as you see, de nada. This is also supposed to have a dial indicator. By pulling this knob, and as you see, nothing comes on. So that's the squelch knob I was pulling on. Channel changer and on-off volume. We have channel 16 emergency channel and our RF power high-low, which I think is 1 watt and 25 watt. It's about the size of a CB radio. Comes complete with a custom knob. And then we have a external speaker out. Takes a normal CB plug. CBs from the time. I have this plugged into a new analog benchtop power supply that I picked up at a ham swap up in Minden. I just got that on my bench not too long ago, and this is the first time actually using it. Went to use my digital benchtop power supply, and it did not turn on. Very plausible I did something as my bench. I've been rearranging, pulling old equipment, adding new equipment, so it could be something I did. I'll have to check. But it's kind of cool that old-time workbench power supply is working. That's going to be a rebuild in a future video. Speaking of rebuild in a future video, I have ordered a hard copy of the service manual, and only did that because I could not find a free online anywhere. So eBay was my friend on that one. Have it, and I perused it. Can't guarantee that I'll be able to resurrect, but I figured this way. It would be fun to try. It'll give me experience, give me a YouTube video, give you something to watch, and I do believe there's not another one of these on YouTube. So at the moment, in my two videos, I do have the market cornered. What am I going to do with it once I get it fixed? Your guess is as good as mine. As stated, I don't own a boat. I have no intent on owning a boat. I just like radios. And it was $5. Can't go wrong. Again, parts if nothing else. Knobs, jack, buttons, switches. You know, there's $5 in parts in just about anything. So I was okay with that. And next up on the docket, we have this fantastic RCA signal generator, model number WR-5Z Bravo, Whiskey Romeo-5Z Bravo. Now, I've mentioned numerous times that I have this affinity towards signal generators, frequency counters, function generators, and alike. Why that is, I have no idea. I just think they're really cool. I really dig them. And as far as I'm concerned, I, Vintage Electronics Geek, just cannot have enough of them. I would be very happy with one of each. And maybe two if I really liked it that much. I didn't realize at the time that this is one that I've been looking at and been wanting. Has this really big cool plate for something. I would imagine the case is repurposed. I do believe this is going to be a solid state device. I have not opened this up, and maybe at one point in time this plug was for a, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go, you tell me. Maybe this is where a big shop vac hooked up, you know. We have a date here. I know you can't see it, but I'm going to tell you. Dated August 1973. What's that? You want to see it? Okay, if you insist. I have to adjust my light so the date wasn't completely washed out, but you can see it says V as in Victor, August 1973. And the device covers from 100 kilohertz all the way up to all the way up to 40 megahertz on the fundamentals, and I believe all the way up to 550 megahertz on harmonics. Had to double check that to confirm that that is a true statement. We do have a crystal socket, so that's kind of cool, and that'll tie into my first video when I had that big fat socket and I said I wanted one of those crystals to gut to for a 10.7 reference. Well, this here would be a good spot for one. 10.7 or 10.0 crystal. It would work out perfect. Probably can't see it. Let me see if I could bump you in. It's ever so faint in this shot. You can see there in the red we have 10.7 sweep and 455 kilohertz. Well, that's because you could sweep on a 10.7 megahertz and a 455 kilohertz, which makes this fantastic for both AM and FM radio alignment. And that's one reason why I wanted this device. Now, the one that I saw, it wasn't an RCA, it was a different brand, but it was the same thing, and that's why I didn't recognize it at first. It was one of the, not a Sencor, but one of the bigger brands, and so I'm really jazzed to have this. We have modulation, internal, external, and then VFO on off, our RF power high-low, and then our crystal oscillator. Well, I know it says crystal oscillator, but it has a high-low. I think high is for one half of this, low is the other half. But for the crystal, to turn on the crystal, I'm not exactly sure where the crystal, how you turn the crystal on. This one here is also, you go all the way high and you activate your sweep. We have a RF input, RF output, and our modulation in/output. And then we also have our band control switch. In this next step, I'm going to simply turn this on, and you're going to gasp. It's going to be amazing. I'm pretty confident. And it's one of these switches that actually turn it on. Now it's this one right here. I've got it hooked up to a VFO. Gosh. To the O-scope. It's late right now, and the air is mighty thin. So even you got to admit that that's pretty gnarly. Until we went to the dark side. That's a Star Wars reference. I don't watch Star Wars. That'll probably be the last one you ever hear from me. Okay, so that's a 455 kilohertz sweep. Sweep off. That's a 10.7 sweep. Now that's the only thing I do miss about having a DSO, is that refresh rate sucks. And I can't wait to clean that screen, because that'll really help on my end. So you can see we're in a lot of saturation there. Not exactly a nice signal there. Sweep off. Okay, now that we got it figured out, now here I'm at about 100 kilohertz. And that's if we believe what the scale is telling us. And I lied, I'm reading the scale completely backwards. It starts off at about 85 kilohertz. And here we are at about 140. That's around 300. Okay, well, just looked up at the timer on the camera and I see that this has gone on way too long. So with that, I think we will go ahead and conclude this video, and we will come back and play another day. I was going to show you my speaker that I bought, but I don't want this video to go on any longer than it already has. But that's my external speaker right there from 1984 for a radio that will be shown in a upcoming video. This is a realistic SP-150 communication speaker. Haven't tried it yet. Alright, well, that will do it for this video. We will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.